to moderate tomorrow, but we had to switch because Ronald Sanabria got a flight delay, so his panel has been moved to tomorrow. Unfortunately, one of the panelists, Per Gunnar Ettervik, who is the senior consultant of Turismo Norway, cannot attend. He has got a health problem. We hope that he recovers soon. You know, this is one of the risks of traveling. You know, we change climate, travel many hours, so we wish him all the best and hope to have him back to the meeting as soon as possible. So we'll have this panel on, I think, one of the key issues affecting the tourists from the perspective of sustainability, over-tourism. But we wanted to add also a new element, the under-tourism aspect. Because while it's true that you have a few iconic destinations which are overwhelmed by tourists and all the related problems, we also have a number of destinations where the volume of tourists could actually be increased for the benefit of local population, for the benefit of the local businesses, and so on. The dynamic of the panel will be as follows. I will have a short introductions, 5 to 7 minutes, showing a few slides. And then each one of the presenters will also have a 3-4 slide max, and we'll make an introduction. You have all the bios of the panelists in the booklet that you received. All of them have a wealth of experience in tourism, and what is interesting from different perspectives and also from different latitudes and in different continents. So I'm sure that there will be an enriching panel. We, of course, would like you to interact as much as possible. And for that reason, we'll have not only the questions and answer at the end, but I propose that if you like, if you have a question during the discussion, you write it in a piece of paper, and Bashi, who is, where is Bashi? Yeah, there, taking a picture, it will help taking the paper, bringing it here, so maybe that question, if it's relevant to that discussion, I can have that questions on behalf of you, so there is also this interaction during the various presentation. And of course, as I said, at the end, there will be in any case a discussion and questions and answers from you to the panelists. Okay, so without further ado, just a quick introduction. So just showing a few articles and a few photographs of a situation I'm sure you may have heard of. Venice, 30 million tourists, 60,000 residents. That tells you all about the problem of the city. There was an attempt a few months ago to install turnstiles to limit the flow, especially in places like Piazza San Marco, etc. I think that was a mixed result. There is definitely a problem of over-tourism on a city like Venice. I personally don't see a quick solution in hand. But anyway, this is just one of the cases. Palma de Mallorca, Balearic Islands in Spain. Palma de Mallorca mayor a few months ago decided basically to ban all the rental of tourist apartments within the city. It was found that the amount of tourists that could live in the city was more than what the island could absorb. So they've limited the Airbnb and others to just certain areas outside the cities, and therefore try to reduce the flows into the island. Even we had an alliance of South European cities that joined forces, they made an alliance to make sure that some of the negative impacts of over-tourism would not affect them. And they published a manifesto and they meet regularly and try to find specific solutions. Philippines, this is a case, and in fact it's ironic that I think GSTC had a meeting. That was a Boracay beach, right? Just before. And I wonder what was the influence of GSTC that made the president take the decision. I thought about it.
He had already made the announcement when they thought he was bluffing.
Okay, right. Good. Anyway, just before I came, I read that this beach was reopened again. I understand that was reopened with some limitation in flows, but you know, this is a case where a point was reached. I mean, you can see President Duterte, as you know, it's famous for speaking openly. It's kind of like Trump of the Philippines. So he called it a cesspool, so he took that decision. But then you also well know as well the case of the Thailand's Maya Bay that was also closed down, the famous beach where Leonardo DiCaprio made the famous movie. Dubrovnik, this is a city I had the pleasure of visiting several times. Dubrovnik is a small walled city and beautiful, it's a jewel in the Adriatic Sea. There were so many cruising ships arriving there that the city was overwhelmed. And therefore there was a decision taken whereby there was limitations on the number of and the size of cruise ship that could dock in Dubrovnik, and that helped solve the problem. And this is the case of Amsterdam. I mean, Amsterdam have a problem as well, and they try to solve it in a bit of a process. This is the Amsterdam, which is not only limiting access, but trying to proposing solutions. And they, for example, have used a lot of the social media of the applications, sending notification to tourists where they are likely to have crowds. And even they went up to the point, I don't know whether they got a special permission from the users, that looking at the social media profiles of the tourists, they were suggesting them, look, don't go in that square that is crowded. You may like to go on this other place, maybe a bit outside the city. So anyway, they tried to, rather than limiting, to reorient the flows in a different direction. So I'd like to mention two big organizations that have done work on over-tourism. This is UNWTO report that was issued, I think, 6-8 weeks ago. And this report contains a series of recommendations, some of them practical. The smooth visits over time, spread across the different sites, adjust price to align demand, limit access and activities, etc. But what I find, I think, honestly, more interesting and more useful is a model that WTTC developed. That was a model developed, I think, February, March this year. It was, in fact, launched in Madrid. And what it does is that basically gives the tool to create a diagnostic. And to create this diagnostic, used a number of variables, like, for example, density of tourists, number of visitors per square, intensity of tourism, the ratio between visitors and residents, negative TripAdvisor reviews. I think that's very interesting. And one of the conclusions I make about over-tourism, that is not necessarily about numbers, but it's about perceptions. They use the parameter of arrival seasonality, of concentrations of flows into specific attractions, air pollution, historic site prevalence, etc. So the model they come up with, then this one. This is a model, I think it's Barcelona. Patricio will talk us about Barcelona. So you will see that there is one which is, for example, the arrival seasonality and the overloaded infrastructure that is definitely on the red. I mean, the percentile is very high, while on other areas they're critical, but a bit less, and other areas are not so critical. Based on this, let's say, analysis, WTTC did a report on 60 cities. This was mostly for urban destinations, and this is basically what they come out according to the different parameters. Those who have a high, let's say, risk of over-tourism negative impact, and the others have a lower risk, etc. So some conclusions, I think, drawn from what I quickly showed you, and also from the WTTC report, that over-tourism is different in every destination. There is not a fixed number, there is not an equation that tells you square kilometer per number of tourists. This is, I think, it's a key question if you want to understand. We can have over-tourism, which a smaller number of tourists in our destinations, and we can have a bigger number of not having over-tourism if it is well managed. So, and to reinforce that point, over-tourism is more a matter of sensibility than strictly data. And then over-tourism is, of course, easier to prevent rather than to combat afterward. And to that, there is a number of recommendations. Build a comprehensive data to monitor regularly and to know the different strategies. Conduct long-term planning to avoid growth. Involve all stakeholders, public, private, and local communities. And as we mentioned, use new technologies. I mean, the apps that everyone has a smartphone today, so is it possible to use it in a positive way? So that was an initial introduction. As a first speaker, I would like to call on Urs, because he will give us a bit of the theoretical framework at Lucerne universities. You have done research on tourism management, and I think one of the key, I think, for tourist management are the famous 3 Ps: planning, planning, planning. So I think that you would agree with that. But please, could you have to go back, and there is a folder with all the presentations. Back again. Yeah. Right. So of course you have the floor. Is it on? We cannot see it on the screen over there. Can Bashik, someone help us to get the slide on the screen? Yeah, here it is. Please.
Okay, thank you very much, Luigi. Dear colleagues over in the crowd here, I have 3 messages that I want to share with you with the 4 slides that I have presented. The first one is this life cycle. This is a theoretical model. This is one of the life cycle curves that one can have. Many tourism destinations and tourism businesses have exactly this life cycle, from startup, exploration, up to stagnation. And later on, it's depending on the management competence if it's going into decline or rejuvenation. So we in Switzerland, we have a 200 years tourism experience, and unfortunately we had a stagnation period already, some 20 years ago, and we were working hard to go into rejuvenation. But you have to say honestly, the Alpine mountains, they have a decline. So one can learn from this. We have to keep in mind this life cycle. And as it's written on the left side, and Randy told us that Minister of Tourism Thailand said it's not the right way to count number of tourists only. This is the wrong figure. So what we have to do is planning, as it was said by Luigi, planning. What is competent planning all about? So it's the basis for development. It helps us to go the right way, to do the right decisions. Planning means time, needs time, and everybody of us and all the colleagues out in the tourism field are working hard on a daily basis to solve daily problems, but very often they forget about long-term planning. They do a super job day by day, but they lose the relation to the mid or long-term development. So the first point is planning. Second one is we have to be more creative with numbers and figures that we have to collect. Which are the right KPIs, key performance indicators? And it's not only counting guests, for example. We have to be more clever. And I know, I've been a destination manager before I went to the university. Me too, I did it the wrong way. I just collected the data that were there already. But we have to be really clear that we have to do research, we have to do data collection and data analysis. And this is more complex, and this is mid-term work, costs a lot of effort, but it's a must to have the right key performance indexes to do the right planning. Otherwise you have a development like this. This is a lake, a small lake in Switzerland, and to hire boats or to rent boats here is not a successful business anymore. So this was the second point. The third point goes into this. If we have a planning, we have a fragmented planning. Every business, every single business is doing their business, and we have a general tourism life cycle like it is, the blue line, for example. What we have to do is, or what we have in relation is so-called political life cycle. a governmental and national development, a regional or even a local development of all the economy, with all the industries, with the society, the population as well. This is the black line. And normally they are not harmonized at all. This I experienced in so many places all over the world. So what we have to do is, or we have a lack of harmonization with these life cycles, and we have to merge these strategies. All in all, I would say, we have to do a coordinated planning between political bodies, national, regional and local level, together with the tourism industry, normally guided by a strong destination management organization. And if we bring these perspectives together, we will have a more sustainable development. And the tourism businesses and the industry has to understand that the government, even the local governments, they are not enemies. They are a strong partner in the tourism industry.
Thank you. From a question which is both from academic and also living in Switzerland. When the term overtourism is relatively recent, overtourism or tourismophobia. But when, from your perspective, the concept of overtourism started to be on your agenda in your lessons in universities? First question. Second, is it Switzerland? There are places in Switzerland. Switzerland is always seen as the place, the perfect place for tourism. But is there any destination in Switzerland suffering from overtourism as well?
I go for the second question first. Yes, there are some places, famous places, like my work town, Lucerne itself, in the summer months. Or we have places like Interlaken or Mount Jungfrau or Mount Rigi, where we have a lot of international guests coming, group businesses bringing loads of people. And there are some periods where we have some kind of over-tourism problem. The thing is, and this is something that we have to teach the population as well, who is complaining against over-tourism? It's the locals. And the thing is, they feel it's over-touristic just on the dates they are doing their trips as well. So it's the behavior of the locals that we have to influence. And of course, normally you see, from a Swiss perspective, from Swiss eyes, all the foreigners maybe from Asian countries, they look differently, and we face them as a huge amount of people. But people neglect all the rest, which are Swiss, normally. And it's not over-tourism, it's mass tourism by the local, by the domestic guests. But we have these topics slowly growing, but of course we are aware of other cities. Your first question, this over-tourism is a young discipline. It's maybe 5-8 years only. And as I said, the blue line, this is representing alpine tourism. And 20 years ago, we were going into this decline. So, under-tourism in the alpine region is the hotter topic than over-tourism right now.
Thank you. Patricio? Well, Patricio represents the Instituto of Responsible Tourism, has been one of the first members of GSTC and runs a certification program called Biosphere. What I think is, we'll listen from him, they also been involved in Barcelona in advising or certifying Barcelona. So, this is the typical case which is always mentioned as the case for over-tourism. So we really would like to hear from you how you're addressing that problem, how you're advising the city on trying to reduce that problem.
Okay, thank you, Luigi. Hello, everyone. Well, I will speak about the case of Barcelona because you already know what are the problems that they have. I just wanted to mention two criteria that the Biosphere Destination Standard speaks specifically about this over-tourism problem. And in the case of Barcelona, they now have the Tourism 2020 Barcelona strategic plan with 10 programs, 30 lands, and close to 100 measures. And it all involves the 4 topics of them that just Luigi mentioned, and I will go it through. In Barcelona, there are 30 million visitors. There are 37% use tourist public transport, and there are of this data. This is very, very interesting to know. These 5 these programs are aligned with the urban balance, tourist accommodation planning, are clearly committed to sustainability, other players involved, and benefits for citizens. For example, I will just be quickly in the introduction point some examples of this. First is to against illegal accommodation, the campaign online and information with a specific web, because this is one of the key elements of the accommodation that has been in not just in Barcelona but in many urban destinations. Of course, knowledge, as Luis just said, big data analysis, getting information analysis. So with this information, you can do actions. Of course, the Tourist Council now in the previous years, tourism involved all the city. It speaks with all the stakeholders. Later, if you like, I can explain the case of Paraguay. That's very interesting. And for example, in these overcrowded spaces, they can manage the flow management with big data using action, use case, for example, in this Sagrada Familia. So later, I will explain more things. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricio. I know for experience, because, well, I've been in Barcelona many times. We went to one of the first GSTC meeting in Barcelona. We know there is a serious commitment from some authorities and our plan, but still, it seems that we don't see a clear solution inside. I mean, the results are not there. There are attempts. I know there are a few hotspots, the Sagrada Familia, Ramblas, where they get crowded. You have also a problem of cruising ships in Barcelona. In spite of all these goodwills, your good advice, and has it been any objective and concrete results in the last 5 years? Is there a trend whereby we will see some improvement? I think, as was rightly said, over-tourism is more the perception of the local residents, which are reacting to see where they see that the benefits are overwhelmed by the negative impacts on their lifestyle. Could you tell us something about any concrete results that was achieved recently in Barcelona?
Yeah. The problem of Barcelona is they did so well in promotion from 1992 that when they realized that they have a problem was around 2005. That was when they started the new strategic plan for Barcelona to have a great city to live in and to use the tourism as a key aspect for this. But it was already a high number of tourists, and it's difficult in that moment to start the management. So that's why in 2011 was the first destination certified in the world with our standard, because they have really a management plan. It takes a long time to implement, and it is a continuous project that you cannot stop coming the tourists. There are a lot of actors that want increase numbers, as usual tourist behavior is numbers and numbers. But nowadays the tourist satisfaction in Barcelona is 8.7, I think, and the satisfaction of the residents is, I think 2 years ago was 92%, so it wasn't so bad. But in specific days, in a specific place, is the problem. And what now we have been doing with the Diputación de Barcelona or the province is a project to involve all the destinations, so the people that goes there, that sometimes go 2 or 3 times, can do and see other places. But this is a challenge. But I just might want to make one reflection. It's not just a tourist problem. It's a population problem, because maybe if I live close to the football stadium, I could say, well, it's a problem of there are a lot of people that goes to see the football, and we are 8 billion people now in the world, so we are overcrowded maybe, and it's very easy now, the connection you have, if you don't have a management plan but just a promotion, you will be suffer from overdoing for sure, because it's so easy to fall in this problem.
Right, there is a reflection. We were talking earlier on about relations with migration and tourism with the gentleman over there. And from what you say, I gather that this is kind of looking for or projecting problems where necessarily they are not. I mean, now we have this wave of xenophobic reactions to migrations in Europe, but there are a lot of problems which are not due to migration. So what you say, I think, is an important point. There are problems which are problems with the city because of populations, because of services, because of cost, etc. But it may be easier to project it and say, well, this is all the fault of tourists.
Yeah, because we are all tourists, many times in the year.
However, from you say, I think it's an important message, I think, from all those involved in destination management, that you say Barcelona was promoting, and I hear sometimes from destinations, from authorities, say, well, but I don't have an over-tourist problem. My destinations are very few tourists. The contrary, we have to push, and then we have a case of a destination that suddenly finds itself overwhelmed, and then it's too late. So I think it's never too late, even for destinations with small flows, to start thinking ahead of time, and not necessarily when the problem is there, because we are seeing, and WTTC says as well, it's much easier to prevent than trying to solve the problem later on. Well, thank you, Patricio. Well, Jonathan, left to the lab, because you have a broad experience from your in National Geographic, and also now as the chair of the Stewardship Center. So we would like to hear, and then association with GSTC also for many years. So please give us your wisdom.
My wisdom has me one slide too fast. I love Iceland, and I've been there several times, somewhat by surprise, but they were happy to see it because they were climbing out of probably the worst part of the financial collapse of 2008. And I agreed to write about over-tourism for National Geographic Traveler, and I went back this summer. And I can say that it wasn't as bad as I feared, but it wasn't as good as I hoped. Reykjavik is not the city I remember from only 8 years ago. It's changed drastically by tourism. And other parts of what they call the Golden Circle, this is the one-day tour you can take out of Reykjavik. Some of it seemed to be working out right. This picture here is of Thingvellir. It's a National World Heritage Site. And it was actually a gathering place originally, so it's kind of come full circle now. It's a gathering place again. And as you can see, there's a lot of people there, but it's not overwhelmed, and it's a big sprawling site. It gets more complex when you're dealing with people standing around a geyser like this. There's only so many people you can get around Stoker, and you begin to run into problems. So the Golden Circle is heavily but not enough really to make any difference. And within Iceland itself, they borrowed an idea from Ireland's Wild Atlantic Way, and they're now inaugurating the Arctic Coastway for Iceland. And this will be helpful to some rural communities in the north of Iceland that need more tourism, because otherwise they're all leaving. They can't make enough money. So my tentative conclusion is that redistribution helps under-touristed places. It's probably not going to do a whole lot to relieve over-tourism in the high-pressure places. And when we talk about the balance between under and over tourism, as practically everybody has said, it's not just a matter of numbers, but a matter of what type of tourist. And as tourism growth continues unabated, I think we're going to have to think more seriously about this and how to begin to change the way we travel. For example, a lot of those tourists in Iceland go because they want to experience Iceland, get a sense of what it's about. And a lot of tourists go so that they can do this. And I don't want to be the Grinch who takes away the selfie sticks for travel, but there's actually a large number of people whose main purpose in being there is to take a selfie against a foreign site. And this guy is an influencer. He does videos on travel. He's got a following. And this is kind of setting an example that just adds to this kind of hit and run selfie stick tourism that counts for a fraction of over tourism. And the way we need to deal with this, as we've said in various ways, is a coordinated approach. And what you often hear in an over-tourism situation is nobody's in charge. The government's not controlling it, the private sector's not controlling it, it just kind of happens. And I've realized recently that part of this is because of the perception of the tourism industry itself, both by itself, by governments, and often by the general population. And that is, it's where the money is. It's where you've got a spreadsheet and you can count where the money's going, who's making it, and so on. The ultimate product for most tourism, except manufactured attractions, is the place. And the money doesn't go there. This is dismissed in economics as an externality. The vibrant city, you get that for free. The beach, the climate, you get that for free. So it doesn't count. And we need to come up with ways to join these two essential things as we go forward. And there's a few that get it. Ecotourism people understand it. That was the whole idea. Custom tourism, it's all about the place. They understand it. But governments and planning agencies and development banks, many everywhere, do not make this connection because the money doesn't connect with the right-hand side of this picture. And this is why we are concentrating a lot on destination criterion A2. This to me is perhaps the most important criterion of the lot. And some of you who are in Chile know that we were beginning this project last year, and we ran out of resources for a while. It is now up and running again in cooperation with the American University in DC. And read that definition, that criterion. It is so important. And that is why we're now looking for any arrangement. We call them generically Destination Stewardship Councils. It might be a DMO, it might be a committee, it could be any arrangement. But does it meet that definition, even part way? And if it does, we want to know about it. And here are some of the candidates that have come in so far through our questionnaires. And we want to hear from you if you have any suggestions. There are many more in already and a lot more to come. And what we want to do is write these up, because I am asked all the time, can you tell me about a place that's doing it right? And we need to have good, solid answers and good examples. And what works in one place may not work in another. So we need quite a variety, and hope to hear from you. Thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think you're quite skeptical about the spreading, but you mentioned an extreme case from Iceland to Peru. And of course, Iceland is an island, so it may be difficult. But we're also discussing Venice. You know, Venice is surrounded by a region which is beautiful, and you have so many small cities which would be as attractive as Venice. So we would like just to dismiss the spreading as one option. Of course, there is always an option, but it is a combination. Now, how would you see, what in your view are the three main causes of over-tourism? Just telegraph.
We forget that population growth is part of it. Growth in affluence is part of it. And growth in technology, particularly the internet, but also the size and inexpensiveness of air travel, a lot of contributing factors. I don't think it's Airbnb. I think that would have happened anyway, just under a different arrangement. That is another manifestation of the internet. And there's more and more people who can afford to travel now. And we calculated once that if you figured just 4 billion people wanted to get a good look at the Mona Lisa and rated them by the painting in groups of 25, it would take 304 years for that line to pass that painting. These are real numbers, and it's not getting any better. I'm getting a little frightened by what I see.
Right. I think this is, to me, this is a key question because many of the problem of tourism have to do with the concentration of time and space, but they're not necessarily a global issue. If this 1.4, 1.8 billion visitors, if they were spreading equally in all possible destinations, probably there would be not a problem at all. So isn't rather a problem of concentration of space and time? Because same argument is done, I mean, it's not closely related, but when we talk water consumption, it says tourists consume less than 1% of the water, but it's concentrated in time and space, etc. So, I don't know, I just floated in the audience. Is that really a direct effect of population growth? Of course, population growth is causing problems everywhere. But is there a way that in fact those numbers of tourists could be spread in time and space in a way where, I mean, the negative effect will be compensated by the benefit?
To an extent, I think it can, but this is tough. If you're a traveler and you're going out to France for the first time and you're going to Paris, we're saying, oh, don't go to Paris, go to some little town. And if you go to Paris, don't go to the Eiffel Tower, go somewhere else. It's a tough sell. I think to the extent we can encourage the kind of travel that is more experiential, and there is a growing demand for that, particularly among young people, that's a good thing. Because they might choose the little town in France as a preferable experience. So in that regard, I think there's some hope. The world is a big place. It's not all trampled yet. But I am somewhat scared about these programs that we're getting too many tourists in Reykjavik, so we're going to send them to Akureyri. Well, great, there goes Akureyri. And I am a little uncertain about that simplistic a solution. I think we're facing a public perception challenge, a public relations challenge. We need to make some types of travel less popular and other types more popular and add incentives to do that. Longer stays. You want to stay for a few hours, you've got to pay more.
Good. Well, the floor is open for questions, comments, disagreements. Agreements? Yes, please. Could you kindly, for those who don't know you, kindly introduce yourself and then put the question. If it is to a specific panelist, please say so. If not, we'll manage.
Yeah. My name is Luigi from Vision on Sustainable Tourism. And I thought it was wonderful to see that phrase, holistic destination management. And I wonder two things, mainly to Jonathan, but I'm sure there are other people that are just as able to answer the question, is that actually a destination is a community. So in a way, tourism is only part of that community activity, and yet everybody seems to suffer from it if they're separate from it. And if you think of it as a destination a place which manages tourism as a part of its activity, that kind of goes towards solving the problem because that's a holistic route to it. We look at it in a macro level here in the tourism industry, but actually people experience difficulties in over-tourism at a very micro level. I experience it. I live in Bath. We have 7.5 million tourists a year. It's terrible in certain times, particularly at the moment with the Christmas market. And if it is about the increasing level of people that have got money to spend, actually, over-tourism, if they were spending a lot of money in the destination and there wasn't any leakage and it was staying, it would be brilliant because everyone would be getting very, very rich. So I'd like to know if there are any areas in which destinations, not destinations, but communities are taking their responsibilities. Number one, taking them seriously. Number two, taking control of their tourism.
Yes, Jonathan. And then, of course,
Yeah.
any one of you as well.
I want to hear from Switzerland on this one too. In some places, and I include that places I live in the United States, there is not much communication between residents and DMOs and tourism people. And this is a problem both ways, because the residents that are getting more and more unhappy with tourism, they get an explosion like the one in Barcelona. There's not a setup for them to communicate that early on, to get an early warning system and so on. And then, on the flip side, often some of the benefits of tourism that go to the residents aren't even aware of. Are their taxes lower because of tourism? Did anybody tell them that? And so much more awareness, I think, between the two sections of the community is called for. And another thing, I just remind you, in a lot of these cases of over-tourism, almost all of them, this was brought on in part by interests and forces within the destination itself that thought it would be a great idea to have a cruise ship here. Or in the case of Ireland, a great idea to push 3-day stopovers. And so you end up with this kind of situation. But Switzerland seems to hold things together fairly well.
I see it more negative than it is. Maybe this is the image. We face still the situation, not enough cooperation between political bodies representing the local population and the tourism industry. It's not so easy because very often the tourism stakeholders, the strongest one, are represented in the DMO. And of course, they fight for their personal benefits. And spreading the benefits within all the tourism industry is another task. So you have to have a very competent DMO manager to handle different, sometimes hidden agendas of the stakeholders. And not only to make the rich and strong stakeholders even stronger and richer, but to spread. So the discussion within the DMO is difficult because you have thousands of strategies that you have to combine and then link it with the regional or the local political agenda. So this is the huge task. And so I was discussing just before, during the break, what we have to do. The DMO, of course, has to be very competent, but also every single business has to do the best possible job, because somehow they should be independent from the DMO. Running their business is their personal task. But I would say the majority of small and medium-sized businesses lack of skills and competence to run their business on the long term. So, what is the management competence in tourism businesses? I think we have to educate, to coach businesses, being a part of the puzzle of the DMO or of the destination, and then bring it together with the political agenda. So, I think hundreds of activity fields, but we should not forget it's every single business's job as well to be a part of the tourism stakeholder industry.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think, the small and medium business. I think this is a key issue. I just alluded in my speech because in tourism, I think worldwide, they represent, I think, over 70%. And the access and the cost to innovations, management innovation, technological innovation is very high. And it's much easier for the big chains to operators. And this is, to me, it's a problem that still needs a solution. And I would like to link it with another issue that maybe Patricio will comment as well. I remember from NW, we were always saying tourism is not high enough in the political agenda. You mentioned that you have the big fish taking it all, but in that sector that doesn't happen because the government has much stronger control. But tourism is saying, well, this is an activity, it's a private sector, we just oversight from the top, but we don't intervene as much as we do in other sectors. So you think that there should be tourism higher in the political agenda, in national and maybe locally, and having a bit more influence in certain strategies at the destination level? So please, you answer your question, and then if you want to comment on that as well.
Okay. Taking in consideration what you're saying, for example, I just want to mention Thompson Akanaga is here, and he could explain more later. The involvement of the enterprises, small enterprises and medium enterprises, they committed to the sustainability of destination. That is a project that we have been working with the Diputación de Barcelona, for example, 450 enterprises where the destination is involved in how the enterprise is committed to the sustainability and the continuous improvement, and there is no a third part audit by us, but it's a platform, a methodology that helps them, and also the involvement of the First Nations in the objective of the sustainable tourism of the destination in Thompson Akanaga is very interesting. And just to mention one example of the case of Barcelona, because I'm talking about it. It happens in Park Güell. It's a park in the center of Barcelona that was crowd of people, and because of that there was many problems. The citizens that live in the area can't cross and can't enter. There was a lot of buses that blocked the street of the people that can go to the school for the children, and also there were a lot of destruction of the park, and it was the government, the council, have to repair it. So what they do is they take like maybe 2 years. They involve all the stakeholders, all the citizens, all the neighborhood that are all across, and finally what they did is they close it. Finally, you have to pay in advance, but it's open for the citizens that are in the neighborhood. So after 1 year, they made some surveys all around, and everyone was happy. The tourist tour operator, they could give a better service, and they can go with the bus. The neighborhood didn't shout to him. All the citizens could go and enjoy the park that before they couldn't, and the tourists could see the park well with not so much crashed, so they enjoy it better, and it created jobs for all this structure and all this. So I may think maybe 20 jobs. So at the end, it gives more money, it gives more satisfaction to tourists, to tour operators, and to citizens. So this is an example of involvement of the stakeholder and try to give the best solution as possible. So, and of course, taking your question, I think tourism nowadays is not in the political agenda as it should be, but it's increasing the behavior because there are you see that can give a lot of solutions, but also a lot of problems.
Good. Well, finally, good news to Park Güell. After so many bad news, we're here all morning. So that's it. Is there any other question? Yes, please, Luigi, my homónimo colleague.
Okay. Yes, I'm Luigi Mazzaglia from Vireo. This overtourism is quite an interesting topic, and I appreciate that the focus is on management, communities, and so on. But I wonder why there is not a focus on those factors that attract millions of thousands, maybe millions of people in some cities. These factors are cheaper, maybe illegal accommodation that shouldn't exist, thousands of places that offer poor food, generating a huge amount of wastes, and these are not regulated. And so I appreciate the focus is on the management, but I wonder why there is not a focus on preventing these kind of factors that I believe are living and moving millions of people, like for example in Venice, illegal accommodation, or in Barcelona. We've seen that picture, someone complaining about a tourist, but probably the neighbor of that people has an Airbnb, and for 40 euros they rent an apartment for 3 days. So I would like to know your opinion about managing these elements, these factors. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Luigi. I think you stressed, I think the point was raised, but I agree with you, it wasn't stressed enough. I mentioned the Palma de Mallorca example, and I think Jonathan mentioned about Iceland. Yeah. But it has been seen, I agree with you, it has been seen as one major cause of over-tourism. It's just when you had only a hotel or in a few touristic apartments, you could really know how many people the city could host, and now also because of the irregularity regarding some of them, that is becoming a big issue. Yes, please, Chris.
I have two aspects that I would like to highlight on these questions. First of all, I think the tourism industry and the governments they are in a position to react. They are not proactive, because digitalization, technology development is much faster than you can adapt in a system. First you have to see what's going on, and doing laws or whatever kind of regulation is a reaction only, but the speed has been faster, and so you have this Airbnb everywhere spread, and it's a reaction only. This is bad luck, but this is digitalization. One thing. Second thing is, again, connected with the aspect of segmentation or planning. I think when everyone in every destination or every business has to think about what is my client, what is the right guest, the best guest. And if we go for quantity only, we for sure we will have a huge portion of clients that we don't want to have, in a way. Yeah? So I give you an example of the city of Krakow in the south of Poland. Warsaw was a tourism spot for a long time, and then they have an airport there, and the low-cost carrier realized, oh, Krakow is not so bad, historical center, very nice architecture, and they flew in and feeded Krakow with a lot of, let's say, UK tourists. Let's call them cheap tourists. Going there Friday night, leaving on Sunday night. What they brought was a mess, noise, waste, beer bottles and all these things. So, from a quantitative approach, they have been very successful, increasing the number of incoming guests on an annual basis, huge growth, but with wrong guests. And this is lack of planning or short-term planning. And we have to plan to adapt before, and of course we have to improve the systems on the governmental to react faster. So, but it's a task.
I want to speak briefly to this Airbnb business, because the sharing economy is, I think, much more complicated than we commonly think. Where Airbnb and the others, I think, are most misused is, as you know, situations like in many of these European cities where somebody's buying up multiple flats, multiple units for the sole purpose of renting them to tourists. That should be regulated out of existence. But Airbnb does some good things too. Anytime I use Airbnb, and particularly I like to use an Airbnb where the host is present, because I can talk to that person, it enriches my travel, and I get an idea of what it's like to live in a dwelling unit typical of that city, perhaps. On top of that, there are some situations where Airbnb helps the residents stay there because they have the option to rent out a room or a mother-in-law unit in the backyard, so they can make enough money to stay in an otherwise gentrified area that they would have to move out of. So it really depends on the situation and the economics of that particular real estate market. I think it's too simplistic to just say get rid of Airbnb. That's going to hurt a lot of people, and it will make tourism less satisfying. the other hand, the multiple units is total misuse. That's my
Thank you, Jonathan. I like your what you expressed because, for example, in the case of Barcelona, let's talk about again of Barcelona. I'm not representing Barcelona, but well, 2 years ago, I think I've got the data, another data. 800 apartments what every day upload to the Airbnb and HomeAway. So the Council of Barcelona, it's impossible to have enough workers to see if the apartment is legal, and other thing is Airbnb doesn't give you exactly the flat and the name until you hire it. So at the same time they block the new construction of hotels in Barcelona. It was it was very noticed, and a lot of enterprises that were against it. But also you have to see the good points of this, as Jonathan said, because sometimes legal accommodation doesn't leave enough money in the destination. Sometimes it's from investment from abroad, people that work from abroad. For example, in Canary Island, I think $8 of $10 don't stay in Canary Island, go abroad to United Kingdom. So maybe I don't want that kind of tourist and accommodation. I would like another kind, good planning. So this is very complex. It's not easy to give an answer.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is the concept I gave you, John. The original concept was fine. The problem that has deteriorated to a way that now most cases you have people just investing and buying apartments. I mean, number of cities, Lisbon, Barcelona, but many other cities, people cannot live anymore in the center because the prices doubled, tripled, and that I can tell you that residents will not like tourists. People like not to live where they used to live. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Good morning. My name is Chris Kruger and I'm from Matella Safaris, and I would like to bring to the panel's attention a challenge we have a lot closer to home, here in Mount. Everybody lands in Mount Airport and they fly straight out to the camps, and so Mount itself has very little any positives coming from tourism. And there was some discussions earlier this week that maybe Mount should develop something to keep people in Mount a little bit longer. But it's been a challenge that's been ongoing for many years. And I was just wondering if there is somewhere else, other destinations, tourist destinations in the world where so many people come into a town and they all leave without any benefits to that particular town. If you can maybe give us some advice on that.
Rural Alaska has the exact same problem. And the indigenous peoples in Alaska are trying to figure out a solution because the tendency is for really very rich people to fly into Alaska, Hollywood types and whatnot. They land at a little airport next to the community, they give you a private plane and go off to a wilderness camp. And the local people don't get anything out of it. It's a challenge, but I think to the extent that you can create some kind of sort of cultural / nature / historical center in Mound with participation by the people of Mound, it becomes a little bit of an attraction enough, I think, to keep some folks in the town for an extra day or so, and that might be something to look at. It need to be a cooperative effort, and I think it would be better if it is a cooperative effort, because a lot of people here have ideas and things that maybe they could contribute to something like that, and that'd be what I do.
I think it's absolutely correct, but we have to be very careful to try to copy-paste. Normally this will not work in the long term, maybe in short term you can have to copy some success factors. But in the end, you need to have your own identity, and maybe it starts with very, very simple SWOT analysis. What are your strengths? What is your identity? What is the local specialty? And to work on these, to develop these, and to form it as a tourism product. And if it's Alaska, if it's Philippines, or if it's here in Botswana, I think the local identity is the source of growth. And if you want to just copy success model from somewhere else, you will fail. We can get some ideas. Another example that we cannot compare one here is the small city of Basel. It's 200,000. It was a business spot for pharmaceutical and they had an airport, an international airport, just outside of. During the last 20 years, they very, very much and made focus on culture tourism, cultural offer, and they are super successful. And now the people flying into Basel stay in Basel, bringing money as you just wish, bringing money to Basel, and people are going to Basel now, not to Bernese Oberland, Zurich, or wherever. So, but that was their strength, his cultural strength.
No, I completely agree with Bowen. Just, I remember you're saying, but in the other sense, the cruises that normally doesn't leave money with destination where they spread a lot of people, and the money stays in another sense. That's it.
Thank you. So, was a question from the gentleman there, please?
Yeah. Good morning. Thank you very much indeed. My name is Robert Hanna. I happen to live on the North Atlantic way in Donegal in the west coast of Ireland. I've also lived in Sedona. I'm now living in Botswana. And what strikes me really is that, and I'm not involved in the tourism industry, by the way, but one of the key things in any business is who are the beneficiaries of tourism? Doesn't the conversation start with who do you want to be the beneficiaries of any tourism activity? I don't know any other business in the world where you go in and exploit the infrastructure, the resources of the community, without paying back in a way that has the focus of the shareholder. Your shareholders are your local community. You know, how do they, if you start from that premises that we are developing tourism to benefit the local community, that is your starting point for me. Because everywhere I've lived, everyone talks about the negative impact. The West, the new wild coastal island, has pushed property prices up. It's made restaurants unaffordable because people coming in and spending lots of money and buying up properties. Same in Sedona, the same happening here. You know, one of the common stories in Botswana is we have tourism activities, but none of the locals can participate because it's too expensive. So the question really is, if we start with the focus of the local community, it's a development tool, tourism's development tool, we start with asking who should be the beneficiaries.
That's a good point. I make a comment and then any panelists. At WTO, we launched the Sustainable Tourism Eliminating Poverty Initiative that was started back in 2002. And the principle was to have small pilot projects in developing countries that then they could be kind of a sample of seeds for a larger project to develop. One of the difficulties was to assess exactly how much leakage and linkage there was. I mean, how much of the money was actually staying into the community. And I must say, honestly, from my experience, I think the balance is not right yet. Especially in many developing countries, the balance is not the right one. There is much more leakage to international operators, hotel chains, air transport, etc., that remains into the community. For me, this is still something that we will have to address in a better way. But mine is more of a global response, but maybe some of the panelists want to give some more specifics.
Yeah. So this is a key, it's the key question, it's the key point. For example, I just want to refer some reflection about the new globalization where it used to be that the accommodation was hired and built by a local where he involved in the community, and normally the hotel goes to the children so they can manage it. But now that you don't know who's the accommodation, who's behind, where the investment, and it's an international giving and buying of action of enterprise. It's more difficult to involve the accommodation, for example, of the tour operator in involving the community. So finally, what it is needed is to give a possibility to locals to create their own enterprises with good quality, with as you say, the capacities, and this is like we should do or help to do. So the real services given by the local community and the benefits are given to the community.
Maybe I can add a specific case I had during my personal professional career. When I was a DMO manager in Wagenseil, this is an alpine resort, 3,500 population, but with about 25,000 guest beds. So, what is the beneficial of tourism? About 18 years, we started 18 years ago, we had a project, 4 destinations in Switzerland. It was called Enjoy Switzerland. And one aspect was how to develop. And if you have the goals of DMOs and maybe the mayor of the town, you formulate some goals. But you're not really sure if this is the ones that the population wants. So the first thing we did, we gave the opportunity to the population to give their voice, to give their opinion, how they want to develop tourism. What kind of quantity, for example, all year or seasonal, what kind what growth, for example. And with such a platform we had, we decided, as a community, as a destination, we decided to say no to the request from our national tourism board, Switzerland Tourism. They realized there's a strong demand from India to visit Switzerland. And Switzerland Tourism needed spots and destinations to bring them. And we, the population, said, it would be nice to have more tourists. Nothing against Indians, huh? It has nothing to do with it. But this type of tourists we don't want to have because we cannot serve them the way they wish. So their goal was, let's maybe reduce the growth rates, but let's harmonize the type of tourists. This was a huge opportunity to get Indians, but they said, no, we don't want to have, we concentrate on the European market. So, but it was important to have a platform where the community can say what they want. And so we knew how to, what the benefits should be.
I'm not sure whether you can enforce this, but you can say, welcome to Switzerland. We hope you enjoy our Swiss food. There's no Indian food, there's no Chinese food. You are in Switzerland, but that's tough to enforce. Two things occurred to me, and one thing I think you said was very important, and that is to engage the residents right from the beginning. And when I am talking directly to communities, my message is, if you live in an attractive or interesting place, and you do not take charge of how tourism is conducted in your place, somebody else will. And they'll not do it with your interest necessarily in mind. And if you want to start a nice fight going on with any DMO, raise the question of how big taxes are used. Almost every jurisdiction taxes a tourist who sleeps overnight. Where does that money go? What is it used for? And in cases where you've got a disproportionate situation, like these developing countries, those local people should be getting something out of that tax. Often what it's used for is to promote more tourism.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yeah. I can see.
Hi, this is Jin Sano with the World Wildlife Fund. I just had a couple of observations about the over-tourism issue. We work and collaborate with some of the largest travel companies like Airbnb and Royal Caribbean, as Randy mentioned. And one of the things that we have discovered is it is all too easy to point fingers at some of these larger travel companies, which oftentimes there's more that meets the eye. And for example, Airbnb, on average, the homeowner or the host gets 97% of what people pay for their accommodations. And so, with respect to the gentleman who asked about Maui, oftentimes it comes down to the whole destination management planning process and issue, and to what degree a destination consciously decides what forms of tourism might be appropriate or wanted by all the stakeholders like communities. And for example, Botswana is really well known for very high-end, low volume tourism. Well, if Botswana wanted to go the direction of higher volume, lower margin business and offer more reasonable price accommodations that might be booked by the Airbnbs or go through the TripAdvisors of the world, then there's that opportunity that exists in Maui. But that's ultimately the decision of the local jurisdiction and the whole destination planning process and what kinds of visitors you want. For example, with Airbnb, some jurisdictions like San Francisco charge the same hotel tax for Airbnb properties as the hotels have to pay. And so they get a lot of financial benefit from that, and they have regulations like in San Francisco, if you're an Airbnb host, you must live in that property for 275 days out of the year. And so, but that's, again, a regulation on the part of the destination. So, all these sorts of things contribute to, ultimately, if your aspirations are to get more revenue for like the residents' amount, maybe you want to put in more development that is, let's say, souvenirs, fair trade souvenir shops. All these high-end travelers like to buy stuff, and there's nothing basic, or at least I could tell, nothing really obvious in where those high-end travelers can go. So again, it all goes back to planning and investment, and what kind of vision that the destination has. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim Sano. I think was more of a comment or a perception, and from your point of view, I don't think there was any specific questions, unless I'm mistaken. We have time just for one more question, and then we will have to close. Please, gentlemen over there.
Actually, mine is more of a comment. I was just, as I'm listening to the other speakers talking, I thought would assist by learning from like the panel up there, because if I remember well from Patricio, they already have systems in place for a destination management organization. Maybe what is lacking here is the cohesion between the industry, the tourism industry, government, and other stakeholders to come together and have a destination management committee for the area, because I think that would help to address some of the issues. Maybe currently the operator like Machado, he might have operations in the Delta and his gas goes directly to his camps. Whereas if there was a destination management of some sort, they would work together and come up with sustainable solutions, and it really areas like Mau. So I think we could learn a lot from the existing district management organizations, because Patricio, he showed us how they are doing it. Maybe it's for the benefit of the rest of the people here.
Thank you. I think you reinforced the point that was made in the panel here. The DMO, not only by name but by facts, is not only having a nice office and some people stay there, but needs to bear real influence and a good balance of interest between the public sector, the private sector, the big investors, the small businessmen, etc. I don't know if you want to react, otherwise I was suggesting a quick reactions, and then I will ask each one of the panelists for 1 minute conclusion. What I need to do is I don't have to do the work for the conclusion tomorrow. So think about it, one final message, each one of you. But now is Patricio, the question of each.
Yes. When we work with a destination, we certify the public policies with the criteria that, of course, is aligned with the GSTC standard for destination, and then with the enterprises to commit to the destination that Glenn can explain in his experience, and also with all the rest of the stakeholders, the citizens, the Twitters and all these new bloggers and people that bring people, tourists to destination, all according to the criteria of sustainability, and that's what we like to share with you and any moment around these days, and that's it.
Thank you. So we're at the final 3 minutes, 12:27. That's sharp. 1 minute each. We'll make it 12:30 exactly. So, Jonathan.
Okay. Well, speaking to the last point, that's exactly what the A2 criterion is about, and I think the more we can think in terms of that, and think in terms that in tourism, the ultimate product is the place and the people that live in that place. And until we begin to think of it that way, we're going to continue to have these problems. There may be other solutions than a destination stewardship council, and we should look at those too, but we must think holistically.
Thank you.
My word is, we, the tourism experts, often argue we have a lot of experience. We are experienced enough to handle the future. This is wrong. Maybe we have a lot of experience, but we should allow more knowledge to come into our own system, which maybe is a business, a destination, an association, whatever kind of body. So allow new knowledge, allow external opinions, and combine this to manage topics of tomorrow.
Thank you. Patricio.
What I'm gonna say, take it as a joke, but thank you, opportunities, because now in Madrid, for example, I will talk about Spain. In Christmas, the center of Madrid is going to be crowd of people, not of tourists, but citizens. So maybe thank you to over-tourists and overcrowd cities. We can go back to the countryside that now it's empty. We can live with the animals, they can live with the how to. So maybe it's good to get outside of the center of the city. That it's not a good place to live with the population, and so take it as a joke, but we have to see also the good things of everything. Thank you.
So we're now on a calling note from Patricio. Good, well, thank you very much. I think we all big round of applause to Jonathan Tuurtellot, who's Wagenseil.